Welcome back to the Sunny Talk Spurs YouTube channel and happy deadline day. I mean, I don't know what will happen on this deadline day for Spurs, but I'm sure if anything does happen, I'll react to it as soon as possible, really, because I'm excited to see if Tottenham do any work. But on this video today, me and Ben Bowman, who I've been waiting a long time to get Ben on the channel. We've been talking about it for ages. We finally met in person, so we're getting to it straight away. We're going to react to the business incomings and outgoings that we have done so far. But without further ado, how are you doing, Ben?
Good, thanks, mate. In a weird way, I'm kind of glad the transfer window's coming to an end a little bit. It's been an exhausting summer, I think. It always is with Spurs. It's like you never really know what's going on, especially with this summer, like the way that, Johan Lang likes to work. Some of these deals have kind of come out of nowhere, obviously with Odobert and, Solanke was kind of linked. And then a week later, he was signed after, weeks of being linked with other players. So it's kind of been hard, especially like as a kind of creator to sort of join the dots and, know what is actually happening. And you're talking about these transfer rumors that have no weight or substance to them. But the fact that we've had a deal with someone like Odobert that has come out of nowhere has been a bit of a throwback. So it's been quite an exciting window, I think, but it's almost felt longer than it usually does. I don't know if that feels the same for you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of getting in and chatting about it because I'm sure a lot of people are going to kind of have different opinions on how this window has gone for Spurs.
That's the thing. I think Spurs fans have got mixed emotions because we've ticked off a few boxes. We've shifted a lot of deadwood, which I'll address later on in the video. But there's still a few areas where maybe we could have done a bit more work there, or maybe Ange or Daniel Levy, Johan Lang, Scott Munn haven't got the players that they maybe had wanted that they initially went out to sign. And also there's a case and point of a lot of players that we've been linked to, like Chiesa, for example, have gone to other clubs. Pedro Neto going to Chelsea as well. So maybe there's a few disgruntled fans in those sort of areas. But we'll get in on the first incoming, and I'm going to do them in price order. So we'll start with Yang. Obviously, signed this summer from Gangwon FC, but has gone back on loan until there for about a €4 million fee. Ben, what do you make of this? Obviously, it's one for the future, not really one for the present.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen of him, I did a video on my channel kind of looking into how he fits in the system. And I think that you can definitely see why Spurs have made the move. A lot of people have been skeptical about it because they kind of see it as an opportunity for Spurs to kind of keep one foot in the Korean market in an era post Son Heung-min, which, as much as I don't necessarily agree with that, you can understand why Spurs would do that, given how kind of fruitful it's been for them commercially. But that's only happened because Son Heung-min is an excellent footballer. And they wouldn't have signed Yang if they didn't think Yang could. I'm not saying that he's going to hit the heights of what Sonny did because, Sonny, what did he go into the top 20 goal scorers in the Premier League over the weekend? Those 2 goals against Everton. That's a lot of pressure on an 18, 19-year-old kid for him to kind of fulfill and maybe surpass Son's legacy. And Son has got such a special legacy at Tottenham. But like I said, they wouldn't have made that move if they didn't see that kind of level of potential in him, in my opinion, which kind of makes that skepticism around it a little bit redundant. But I like the look of him, especially as, that's kind of, and obviously we've gone on to sign Odobert, who we'll talk about shortly. But that kind of profile of winger is someone that Spurs have been crying out for. Could you make the argument that maybe Spurs, given how much of a priority it was for Spurs, they could have maybe spent more in that area? Yes, but then when you come on and I don't think many of us naturally, I know you did a video with me for my channel where we talked about strikers for Spurs. I didn't actually think Spurs were going to sign a striker, to be honest. I thought Spurs were going to go big on the winger. So now we have gone big and signed someone like Solanke. It does, that's where we've kind of made that marquee signing. Whereas I think many people, including me at the start of the window, thought it was going to be a wide player. But they've definitely invested for the future in this position, obviously with Odobert as well. Looks really exciting, both footed, loves to step over like Sonny. I said about it in my video that I did. It's like this kid was kind of in the K-League breaking records, like they were kind of going out of fashion in terms of some of the stuff that he was doing and various player of the months and everything like that. I think he's now earned a call up to the senior South Korea side, I believe, as of the other day for the first round of internationals, which is great. And also gives him a chance to play with Sonny, which is really good. I think I definitely kind of see the potential in him. But again, it's one of those ones where it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when he comes in January, whether he is kind of given an opportunity straight away. I'm not sure how it works with, forgive me, I can't actually remember how it works with squad registration for the Europa League, whether we will be able to register him when he comes in, if we're hopefully still in the competition by January. So it'd be interesting to see how much he actually plays. But, you know, for a very small investment financially, it seems like there's very much a lot of upside for the club and in terms of off the pitch and on the pitch. So I'm excited to see him play. He looks electric from what we have seen so far.
Yeah, I think it's like low risk, high reward potential, and I like what you said about the foot in the Korean market because you can tell the club they must have an eye on it. They will have an eye on it. Levy must enjoy the revenue that comes from the fan base over there, but. Yeah, I feel like what I've seen from him on, highlight reels, and obviously we played against them in the K League game in pre-season, and at the moment he's playing with Jesse Lingard. I saw Jesse Lingard giving him some advice about living life in London. Maybe don't listen to Jesse Lingard if you want to look at your career trajectory. But I think the only thing I'll add on it is, and another one of our players I'll talk about as well. I like what Spurs are doing with some of their acquisitions in the sense of we pick them up, but we loan them back to the club so they can continue their development, like we've done with Destiny Udogie, Papa Matasar, Lucas Bergvall, who we'll get onto shortly. It's just a good thing to he's already pulling up trees there. Let him finish off the season there, and then he can come back afresh. And yeah, I agree with you. I kept touting that I wanted us to sign a striker, whether it was Solanke or Tony or someone of that ilk, Gyökeres, but and go maybe more out for this winger. But the fact that we've done it the other way around, I'm quite a big fan of it because at the moment we've got a lot of wingers with a lot of potential at the club. Brennan Johnson, who I've done a video on, and obviously Kulusevski, who can play in the 8 as well. So I feel like there's a lot of promise for those wingers currently at the club. Maybe they need a bit more of a chance and a bit more of, fans are quite critical of some of our wingers, but I believe as well with the signing of Odobert, we're in good stead when it comes to the wing position. We needed that striker because we were creating so many chances. So I think Yang will be a good acquisition. I feel like what we've seen from Archie, Bergvall, we didn't think these players were going to, be trucked straight in and around the first team, but they have because Ange trusts youth. He's got a good track record of promoting youth, and obviously he knows the Asian market quite well, having managed in Japan. So this is quite, if it shows that we're backing this manager because we're signing players who fit his style and system. But moving on now, and I'm going to talk about this player because he's technically on the list on Transfermarkt. I know we signed him in January, but he technically became a Tottenham player in obviously the summer. It's Lucas Bergvall. I know you're a big fan of him. Obviously, 10 million fee from Djurgården, which forgive my pronunciation of Swedish teams. It's not that good, but. What have you made of? Obviously, he's had a few cameo appearances, but do you think he's an answer for Tottenham in the future as well?
Yeah, 100%. This kid he's mustard. The way that obviously he's only played a handful of minutes in the Premier League, came on against Leicester and had a bit of a maybe turbulent debut in some aspects of getting shouted at by Vicario when he got himself into a bit of a tight situation. But for the most part, he looked so calm and composed in that first Premier League appearance against Leicester. Added a kind of different dynamic to our midfield. And again, like you kind of alluded to it before, Spurs, there was maybe an idea that Spurs were going to go back into the market for another midfielder, kind of this all-action Conor Gallagher type midfielder that we've been linked with throughout the whole of the window, Jacob Ramsey, someone like that, who would have been great fits for Spurs. I do believe that, especially Ramsey. But they see Bergvall and Gray, who obviously we're going to talk about as well in a bit, as kind of good enough. And that's testament to how well they performed in pre-season. And Bergvall was a standout every time he got on the pitch. He's just such a joy to watch. The way he kind of receives the ball in the half turn, so elegant when he's got it, quite physical and robust as well. When you look at him, and maybe this is kind of doing him a disservice because, he's kind of a bit of when you look at him, you expect he's going to be this sort of pretty boy type player, all kind of not flair, but kind of like, just kind of neat and tidy. But he loves getting stuck in and loves kind of winning the ball back high up the pitch as well, which I love. And again, is a kind of non-negotiable for Ange and his system. And again, you talked about it before about Yang. And again, I don't think this signing necessarily goes with maybe what I'm about to say, but I do think it's a really good point that you bring up in terms of like the whole window as a whole, in terms of what the idea of like backing Ange is, whether it's, I think people kind of relate it just to spending a load of money. Or is it, and I think it's probably more relevant for when we talk about Solanke because we've kind of done both, like spent a load of money and signed a player that he really wanted that's perfect for the system. But again, backing a manager isn't just about that money. It's about giving him kind of these players that have high potential that he feels that he can mould into the sort of player that he wants to play in this certain role. Or, we know exactly what Ange demands from his midfielders. And I think we've definitely seen that with Bergvall throughout the summer. He's just a joy to watch, just the way he kind of floats about the pitch. So positive kind of in every action. And again, for 10 million euros, a bit like Yang, what was it, 4 million euros that we paid for him? It's very. And again, Bergvall was someone who was touted a lot. I don't think Spurs fans had heard too much about Yang before we were linked with him. I think that's fair to say. Whereas Bergvall, I believe he'd had trials at Man United before, and obviously Barcelona were very heavily interested in it. And I know Barcelona, kind of the way they've gone as a club, they aren't exactly operating in the best way. But if Barcelona are interested in you, you must be doing something right. So for us to be able to, and it's a bit like Dragusin as well, to kind of be able to prize away a player like that from the clutches of another big European giant, because it shows what we're trying to build at Tottenham. I think he's really exciting. I think he's kind of almost the epitome of that. And I think obviously he's got minutes off the bench so far in the Prem. The Europa League is just around the corner. Obviously the draw is today when this video is coming out. So I think he'll get a lot of minutes there. And I do think there's a genuine chance that if he continues to perform, and again, it's not just about I think Spurs fans maybe need to get out of their own way in the sense of it's not just about having a first team and then players who can come in and, rotate. I think there's a genuine. I'm about to kind of contradict myself a little bit, but I think there's a genuine opportunity for him to kind of break into that first team. But it's also about having a load of different options. He's very different to someone like Lucas Bergvall. He's quite different to some of the other midfielders that we've got. He could come in and sort of rotate with James Maddison, and I think we've got a lot of good options in that midfield area. And I think it's the way that he's kind of taken to. I say taken to the Premier League. He's only played 2 games, but the way he's kind of taken to life at Spurs, very confident, very assured on the ball. I think that's only going to hold him in good stead. So I'm really, really excited about him.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with everything you've said there. The one, I don't want to call it a problem, but the one thing I've noticed with Ange Postecoglou's Spurs side is it's the midfield where, even at the weekend or against Everton and Leicester, very different midfields. Like, he is willing to change it up to make it suit his system. It seems that our defence is very set. Our attack is occasionally tweaked, but it's the midfield where a Basuma might be chucked in, a Sarr might be taken out, a Maddison might come in and out. So I think it shows that there's a lot of potential and a lot of promise being put, in the lap of Lucas Bergvall. And the only thing I'm going to add really is, and I haven't done a Bergvall deep dive since he joined the club. Funny enough, when I was at the Euros in Cologne, I was chatting with a Birmingham City fan who actually lived in Sweden, and his Swedish team was Djurgården. And he was talking to me because I said I was a Spurs fan, and he basically went on the lines of saying, and because of the conversation we were talking about Bellingham as well, and the fact that they've had Bellingham and he's looking at Bergvall, he was comparing him a little bit with how he likes to drive with the ball. He said that we've got basically an amazing talent on our hands, and you don't usually get that insight because when you see a couple of combinations and maybe someone caught a few games at the end of the season when the spotlight's on him, but actually hearing this firsthand insight was something really promising, because you don't really know a lot about these players sometimes until they're at Hotspur away and they're holding the shirt up in front of them. But another player who sort of came out of nowhere and signed in a very dramatic fashion was Wilson Odobert, obviously from Burnley. We paid about 23.3 million euros to him, and as I say, it was literally announced by the club. Very no here we go, no journalist had the insight on this one, but made his debut against Everton and looked quite promising. What did you make of his debut as well?
Yeah, I thought it was really, really promising. It wasn't perfect. I thought that Dixon, the young Everton fullback, did actually quite well against him at times, but I think there were it was kind of a 50-50 battle where Odobert would get the better of him and Dixon would kind of come in and make a challenge. But you kind of look at it, and I know it's when you've got a new signing like that who's young and shows a lot of potential, you do kind of try to find the positives and everything. The fact that he was forcing Dixon into those challenges, in another instance, he wins a free kick and he goes over, or he's able to beat him and get past him. It's just about committing players, and we don't really have a winger aside from Odobert, and obviously we kind of talked about it with Yang when he comes in, that he's able to really do that. Johnson is very much a winger that kind of likes to run and attack the space. That's kind of very much his role, and that's what Ange wants him to do. And I know Spurs fans get frustrated when, myself included, when he doesn't take on his man when he has the opportunity. But this is very much what Wilson Odobert is. He's that 1v1 winger that Spurs have kind of been crying out for. And again, you kind of alluded to it earlier with Pedro Neto. They obviously clearly had a plan to try and get Neto in. They just weren't able to do it because, I think Chelsea and George Mendes kind of got their hands all over it and offered him a more lucrative deal. And that's understandable. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But Odobert was someone that they've been looking at since the start of the window, was identified pretty early. And again, people are going to be, I guess, skeptical of that because it's like, are you just saying that because we've signed him now? I don't think that's the case at all. I think when you kind of look at the numbers and you kind of pair it with this kind of data-led approach that Spurs have very much gone for under Lang and Scott Munn with these transfers, it does make a lot of sense. And again, I thought he was impressive on his debut. Every time he got the ball, and it was kind of, it wasn't even just about him. I think it was how Spurs as a team actually in that first half especially were able to kind of create a massive overload on the right hand side where we kind of play our football, and then we'd be able to switch it to him in a lot of space where he was able to isolate the fullback 1v1, and he would get himself into situations where he'd stand the fullback up, and because he's got that little step over in him, he's got that little give and go where he'll then go and run into the space, or he'll come inside. He'd win a lot of corners from doing that. Just get the team up the pitch and get Everton on the back foot, which is something that our wingers don't really have. And I'm a massive fan of Dejan Kulusevski. I thought he was excellent on Saturday. And again, he wasn't really playing in that role. But when you've got Odobert, you've got Kulu, you've got Werner to a degree as well. You've got Yang coming in, you've got Johnson. You've kind of got quite a good plethora of different options now at Spurs, which is why signing someone of Odobert's profile, whether it was the big expensive signing for 60, 70 million, or whether it was a kind of market opportunity, which maybe something like this was. Obviously, they identified him pretty early on. But it was just about getting that profile of player in. And it's like you've got someone there who's 19 years old, who's already shown promise in the Premier League for Burnley last season, obviously scored in his first game in the Championship. And a lot of Spurs fans I've noticed have been comparing our window to a team like West Ham and saying that why didn't we go for someone like Somerville? Why didn't we go for X player? I think if Odobert stayed in the Championship for another year, he would have been next summer's Somerville, where like people would be saying like, why aren't Spurs doing this? Why? Oh, I'm surprised X club isn't going in for someone like Somerville. Like he would be. I think Odobert would genuinely be that player next year. So Spurs have kind of done it a year early, which is good because in the past we've missed out on a lot of young talent from the Championship who have then gone on to be not necessarily superstars, but very good Premier League players in their own right. Obviously, we were in for Jack Grealish. We didn't make that deal happen. We were in for Barry Chieze. Didn't make that deal happen, and we're looking at trying to trigger his release clause this summer. Jared Bowen was another one who was linked for a while. All these players have kind of, and even James Maddison, who we actually did end up eventually signing, could have signed him for cheaper at the time. Why not go and get them now if you kind of see the promise and potential in there? And it's like I said, that debut wasn't perfect, but I think he showed a lot of positive signs. And I'm really excited to see more of him. And I think what was nice about his debut as well is that, like I said, even though he wasn't able to beat the fullback every single time, he wanted to get on the ball and make things happen and drive and get the team up the pitch and put Everton on the back foot, which is, like I said, a profile of winger that we don't have right now, or didn't have before he arrived. And also like the added excitement of it kind of just being a deal that came out of nowhere, which is quite rare these days in modern football. So, no, I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season brings for him. And again, Europa League, great opportunity for him to get more minutes. I think he'll start a lot more games than people think. I think people were maybe surprised to see him in the starting lineup on Saturday. But I did feel like when he came in, he was someone that could make an impact straight away and maybe surprise a few people. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season's got in store for Odobert.
Yeah, he's definitely put his name in the hat for that first team. And it's what you say, it's that fearlessness of wanting to go at the fullback and having that, and it's a term that you use a lot, this dribbly winger that we haven't had. And I agree. I think it's nice to have a versatile option. I feel like all our wingers can, really put in their all in all different games. If you're chasing a game, you might want Brendan Johnson to come on and use his pace. If you want someone to go more directly at someone, you might use Odobert. So I really do like that. And I had a good conversation with Jacob Horsfall, who's a Burnley fan, about him. And he sort of basically said that he is the perfect player for Tottenham, for Ange. He's going to stretch the wing. He's going to go at players. He's going to cut in and everything. So it's just good to hear. And the fact that I think the fee is quite good. He's young, up and coming, plays in the under teams for the French team. And just, promise in the Premier League last year. I know Burnley didn't have the best thing, but he was a bright spark in those teams. But yeah, I think what you're saying about beating teams to a championship prospect is what we need to do. And that's why Johan Lang's been brought in. And people have criticised Lang, but maybe if this pays off, he'll get a bit more respect. But speaking of good talents in the Championship who we have signed. I mean, this list is actually, it's paying each one of them off and teeing me up for the next one. We've got Archie Gray, obviously was the young player of the year, I think, in the Championship for Leeds, signed for about 41.25 million euros, and hasn't started a game yet, but again has come on, sort of dictated from midfield as well. I mean, I am very happy that we beat the likes of Brentford to this signing, and just was shocked because I think there's a lot of neutrals who really like this signing, but a few Spurs fans who are questioning it. So where do you stand on that?
I'm a massive fan of it. I almost see him, and this might not be the most glowing comparison, but for this first couple of years, remember how when Eric Dyer first came into Spurs as that young defender and almost was used as a bit of a utility man in kind of different positions. Obviously, Gray has kind of got a similar set of kind of tools maybe in his locker in terms of being able to play in different positions. He's played at right back in pre-season. He's played as that central defensive midfielder. He's played at centre back. Very much reminds me of kind of a young Dyer, but I think someone who is maybe technically kind of a lot better on the ball. I think he's got more upside than someone like Dyer did. And I think the Dyer comparison is only kind of for these first couple of years before he kind of really nails down maybe that number 6 position. Because again, like that number 6 is obviously you're so exposed in the Premier League. And maybe that's a position where Spurs could have gone and bought someone as well as bringing in Archie Gray, brought someone like for very much. And I do see Gray for the now, definitely 100%. I think like we've spoken about with Bergvall, with Gray, with Odobert, sorry, they will get a lot of minutes this season in various competitions and in the Premier League as well. Gray and Bergvall have both come on in both games in the Prem so far, both times in midfield as well for Gray, which I think they're very much trying to mould him into that. Despite the fact he played mostly at right back for Leeds last season. I thought he was so impressive at right back against Bayern Munich in the second half of the friendly at home. He looks very comfortable playing down that touchline. And that's why I was kind of comparing him to Dyer, because that's where Dyer played when he first came in at Spurs, played at full back and then eventually moved into midfield and then back to centre back. I see Gray as an option for centre back as well in Europe. Again, maybe by the time this video comes out, Spurs might have done a late deal for a centre back. It seems like there's something they're definitely looking at. But to have that bit of added extra depth there, someone who can play meaningful minutes across the board for Spurs this season, the fact that he can play in a variety of positions definitely helps him out. But it's so composed on the ball. And I think actually his best performances in pre-season probably came at centre-back. Again, when he stepped into midfield, it was against I think the first time he started there was against Bayern. And, you know, the team didn't play that well in that first half in the game in Korea. And he was maybe a bit exposed in that. But you're playing against Bayern Munich. You're playing against the midfield of, you know, some incredible talent in there. But I really like the signing. Again, like with a lot of what we talked about, it was a bigger fee, but a lot of upside. I think this is someone that people see will be a regular England international over the next 10, 15 years. He's got so much time ahead of him in terms of his career. And again, that versatility, which is so important in modern football, is only going to aid him kind of get on that England path as well and get on that ladder, someone that can play in multiple positions. And again, with how kind of fluid Ange's system is and how the right back, if he does play at right back and deputise for Porro at times, obviously we've got Spence as well, who we've been able to keep, showed a lot of promise going into the season. That the fact that he's got that midfield experience means he'll be comfortable playing there, and vice versa, really, if he's playing in midfield. So I'm really excited about Gray. Again, seems like a top young guy, really, as much as anything. Like the stuff that's been coming out of the Spurs camp about how he's kind of taken to life at the club and, you know, how he's performed in training and, you know, the standards of him. I remember Alasdair Gold did an interview with him, I think, when he was out in Korea and was talking about, I don't think I've ever spoken to such a mature 18-year-old in my life. You know, this is someone who's got kind of the world at his feet, but it seems he's kind of got all of the tools to be able to deal with it, both technically and also in terms of his mentality. And I think actually coming from somewhere like Leeds where, you know, they're so connected to the fans. And again, you sort of said it about Jacob with Burnley. And I literally, as soon as that Odobert news broke, I was texting him, talking to him about it. But when you listen to how Burnley fans spoke about Odobert in terms of like, you've got a good one here, you know, look after him, he'll be really good for you. That was exactly the same with Leeds and Archie Gray, maybe if not more. And I think these are players that not many Spurs fans, I know Gray was a bit different because he was playing in the Championship, therefore there is more spotlight on him, therefore Spurs fans are probably more likely to know more about him. But sometimes if you don't know anything about him, go off the reaction of the fan base that are letting him go. And I know that doesn't always work out, but the fact that they were so gutted to lose him and really think that they've got such a special talent there and, you know, think that he'll be great for Spurs always kind of tends to bode well. So I'm really excited about Gray. I think, again, like all the players that we've spoken about, there'll be a lot, and you kind of alluded to it with the rotation in midfield. Well, that's kind of probably the area of the pitch where we do see the most rotation because of the options that we've got and also how intense the game plan is under Postecoglou. There'll be a lot of minutes for him this season. So I think it was a very good bit of business. And again, to kind of was one that we saw someone else was going in for him, and maybe it wasn't one that at the start of the window we were 100% desperate to bring in. But I think Spurs probably saw this as an opportunity where we couldn't let him go somewhere else and decided to bring him in. So I'm really excited about Gray.
Yeah, I feel like I just love it because I feel like he won't be chucked in at the deep end because, the midfield is such a specific area that Ange wants to make sure you're comfortable and competent enough, especially if he's playing 8 or 6. And I think that's the thing as well. Like, I keep telling people that I think he will be our 6 more than he is the 8. And people are like, oh, he's not. He's not strong enough. He's weak. He's young. Da, da, da. But it's like I feel Ange has more promise with that sort of player because when you look at we wanted this dynamic 6, like a Rodri type, I just don't know in the market where you find that sort of player if you're, paying upwards of 90 million, 100 million for that player. Whereas like Gray, you can sort of mold into that player. And I think Ange will like to do that because even when you look at like his Celtic team, like his 6 was hardly like the most like it's almost like what we wanted was Højbjerg in a defensive sense, but we wanted him to have the technical ability of Archie Gray. And there's just not many players like that. Even you look at Arsenal, they've signed Declan Rice for that position, but they're actually going to move him probably to the 8, and then Moreno comes in and plays the 6. So it does like sort of, it's hard to sort of, it's all well and good. And I say this to people in my comment section, saying we need to sign this position, but then we never hear a name. I never get told a name. So because
give me an answer.
Yeah, there probably isn't a name. So I feel like Archie Gray could be that name. But finally, on our last incoming, I say last incoming, I'm hoping we do something today. But we have Dominic Solanke, obviously from Bournemouth, the stellar striker that we all wanted. I say all wanted, but I certainly wanted him. I was touting this move actually about 7 months ago because my dad was like, he could be quite good for us. And I was like, it's not going to happen. Too expensive. We'll probably go for Tony. And then I went on the Tony train. But then we actually did sign him for 64.3 million euros. And obviously, debut against Leicester, looked a bit sprightly, looks a bit injured. Jury's out whether he will play against Newcastle. He's got a great goal scoring record against Newcastle. I think he got 3 or 4 against them last season. But I mean, I know you're a big fan, so I'm just going to, here's the floor. Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, again, the perfect kind of striker for our system, really. Again, it wasn't someone that we were a bit like Odobert, kind of came out of nowhere. But again, I remember Spurs being even kind of, again, you don't know how much to believe, kind of these in the know sources and stuff. But I do remember going back to the end of last season, there was rumours that Spurs were very much interested in him. It was just kind of dependent on maybe whether they'd sell Richarlison, whether they'd go in and bring a new number 9. And I think that it's clear to see why they've had such a big interest in him because of how well he presses, that link-up play that we know that he's got, the way that Iraola kind of set up that Bournemouth team, which meant that he was able to kind of convert a lot of these chances in and around the box, and that is exactly what Ange's kind of ideal number 9 is built on. Really, those kind of that conversion of those high XG chances. A lot of them kind of coming from those cutbacks. There was a lot of goals that he scored last season where it was like you can just picture that being Brennan Johnson crossing that ball in and him just getting on the end of it, which is really good. Again, someone that they just feel is perfect for the kind of style of play. Someone as well that, it's a hefty price tag, but also someone who's only going one way, someone who's on the way up, I think, in terms of his trajectory. I think there's a lot of people kind of not writing off the signing, but dismissing it in terms of, couldn't quite make it work at 2 big clubs in Liverpool and Chelsea. But people forget that he was let go from Chelsea, went to Liverpool. Liverpool sold him when he was about 18, 19. And this was where the Liverpool team who were, again, only going one way. They had Firmino as that kind of established number 9 there. Origi as well. Solanke wasn't going to get that many opportunities. And he had chances off the bench. A lot of Liverpool fans said that, I can't quite see it working out from here. It doesn't look that convincing. And again, I know that Harry Kane has kind of gone on to become this amazing striker, but I remember being at that, at that Hearts game back in 2011 where Harry Kane made his debut for Spurs, and a lot of Spurs fans thinking he's not going to make it at Tottenham, and he would have been a similar age. So strikers, and I think Kane definitely blossomed a lot earlier than what Solanke has. He had a few loans where he did really well and kind of kicked on from there. Obviously with Kane. Whereas Solanke's gone to Bournemouth and it's been this kind of really steady trajectory, and it was that relegation to the Championship and that 30-goal season that actually was kind of the making of him there. So that kind of also busts the whole one good season myth, and I think that's something that people kind of need to get out of their heads, really. I think he's only going one way. I think there's also some of the other strikers that we've been linked with, like you said, with Ivan Toney. Ollie Watkins, we've obviously linked with in the past. I'm not saying that we definitely wouldn't have brought him in this summer, but those two strikers alongside Dominic Solanke, who are both a couple of years older than him, are also good examples of how strikers can bloom that little bit later. And that's fine. Just because Solanke wasn't hitting these heights at 22, 23, I think there's this obsession for, just because he's doing it at a slightly older age, that doesn't mean that Spurs shouldn't take that risk on him just because he's a little bit older. If Solanke scores 20 goals for the next 4 seasons, that's very much a great return on a 26-year-old £60 million investment. And I think, like I said, in terms of those pressing numbers, his overall link-up play, which I think one thing I noticed against Leicester, when you compare him to Richarlison, and look, I thought Richarlison did great for us last season when he kind of stepped into that number 9 role and things, that the momentum that he did well for us. The big difference between those two players is everything that Solanke does is very smooth. He's just a good footballer, an elegant footballer, a bit like Kane. Whereas Richarlison, sometimes it would just bounce off him and he couldn't quite make it work. So you've got someone there who's got such a brilliant football brain at the top end of the pitch, who is only going one way, who in this system, it's unfortunate that while he didn't get off the mark against Leicester because then he was injured for the Everton game, we've got a massive game coming up on Sunday, which he might again be injured for. That means the pressure for him after the international break, the first game being Arsenal, which Ange said that he will definitely be back for. You would have wanted him to get up and running by now in terms of a goal, because the media and the outside noise in terms of Spurs have signed a £65 million striker and he hasn't scored a goal yet. I don't think Spurs fans will be that bothered about it. I think they know that they've got someone there that if you give him the chances, he's going to score. So I want to see him play. I don't want us to go to Newcastle away again without a recognised striker, because this is, again, very much, this whole video has kind of been about the long term for Spurs, but in the very much the short term, I actually think the reason that we kind of lost at Newcastle last year and got battered so heavily was because we didn't have that focal point up the top of the pitch that could hold the ball up and kind of allow us to sustain that pressure in the final third. It was more, and that led us to be so vulnerable in transition. And so we do need him to be fit, really. So hopefully he's back for Sunday. But I don't have any doubts or worries that Solanke is going to be, a top striker for Spurs. I really don't have any worries about it at all. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm going to add to it, because you basically ticked all the boxes there, was just the fact that I think it was the right decision to go over Tony, because you look at it, I know 65 million people might think that's a big hefty price, but this guy scored 19 goals in the Premier League. And the bit that I don't understand about football fans is they want Premier League proven players. You've got one in front of you, but it's almost the allure of a Gyökeres or an unknown talent from a different league, is like a Xerxes, just seems to be the one that, because he could come good, but he could also not. And I feel like, homegrown came into account as well. That's why we signed Gray and Solanke as well. Homegrown English, British quota, which we really needed to sort out this summer. And then I just feel like Tony, there's a reason, he's going to Saudi. Must be an attitude thing. And when it comes to attitude, I think Solanke ticks the box for Ange. And this is not so much his skill set, but Ange wants people believing his philosophy, all pulling them in the right direction. And Solanke is a very humble footballer who has sort of respected the sort of pathway he's come up into the team. And you say that about Chelsea and Liverpool. I don't think he was given a chance at each. Chelsea, he just, he did the usual route of going to Vitesse and then, leaving on a free sort of thing, sort of what we're seeing from them now. And Liverpool, it was hard to break into that. And he was very, very young. But I feel like it's a very good signing. I don't really question the fee. He just needs, like you, I just want to see him play. I just want to see him get his first goal and all that. But before I get your opinion on who our best signing is of the window, I just want to do a quick roundup of the outgoings. I'm just going to list them. I just want to sort of get your opinion on, just in general, what you thought of our outgoing business. Obviously, we've sold Skip, we've sold Emerson Royale, and we've sold Roden. Perisic, Dyer, Undermale, Tanganga, Sessegnon have all gone on freeze. Loans are Højbjerg, Brian Hill, who probably will end up going, obviously, as well. Valise, Scarlett, Phillips, their futures are up in the air. They could be prospects. They could probably be moved on in the, probably Scarlett, maybe Valise. Phillips could be one for the future. And then Manor Solomon has gone to Leeds as well. So just what have you made of our outgoing business? Because I'll probably start with this. I think it's been quite good. I mean, it's not necessarily the biggest of fees we've seen for players. I mean, Skip was quite a good one for an English homegrown player. Roden was good in the sense of a good deal with Archie Gray. But I just feel like it was time to get some of these players off our books. they just really weren't, pulling up any trees. I've seen loads of stuff on Twitter about, different team lineups from 3 and 2 years ago of Spurs and just how much the squad has already been rejuvenated. And I just feel like it's a lot of promise. I just feel like this is what we needed to do. We've seen the likes of Arsenal having to turn over a squad, getting rid of the Mustafis of this world, the Kolasinacs and Socrates and all those sort of players. This is our version of it. We had to just cut some ties off. I know people will moan we didn't get any money for Sessegnon or, why isn't Hojbjerg a loan with an option or an obligation or whatnot? But sometimes you've just got to, Levy over the last couple of years has, not wanted to, cut his face, or whatever the saying is, cut his nose off to spite his face. And now he's just being like, all right, I've got to just, sort of take the rough with the smooth and get rid of these players. And so I think it's a job well done. Some of them have just got to go. I think the only ones on that list who could have a future are maybe Valise, Phillips. I mean, Scarlett is struggling apparently again at Oxford. But what do you make of it, really, the outgoings?
I think you're right, and I think the Arsenal analogy is a good comparison because I think it's also when you look at how, not to give him too much credit, you look at how Arteta's kind of been able to imprint his philosophy and style of play. He's been able to do that with a younger, thinner squad, really, in a way, because it's also easier to kind of get across your principles to us. And again, this is the problem that maybe Chelsea are going to have with Maresca. I believe we are a smaller squad than what we were last season, even if we do bring someone in tomorrow. But that's no bad thing when you've got some of the youngsters knocking on the door who aren't necessarily established members of that first team setup yet, but they can be over the course of the season. People like Mikey Moore, etc., and Will Lancashire as well. But wages are a massive part of it as well. Some of those players that you just listed off there, although we haven't got fees for them, and Ndombele was on silly money. Perisic was on a lot of money. Hojbjerg was on good money as well. And yeah, we might not have got the fee that maybe Hojbjerg was actually worth in today's market. We've got some money for him, and he's not. He's out the door. And I think, especially with the case of someone like Ndombele, we haven't been able to sell him. We've taken a massive hit in terms of our £65 million record signing prior to Solanke coming in. But United had to do that with Pogba. Arsenal had to do that with Nicolas Pepe, again, bringing him in for huge, huge money. And, I think Arsenal maybe got a fee. I'm not sure if they got a fee for Pepe or not in the end, but they've taken a hit in some description. But unfortunately, you do kind of, if these investments don't work, sometimes you've got to be prepared to, just grit your teeth and write them off. And I think that's what Spurs have done really well. And I think that's what Lang and the whole club really deserve a lot of credit for. And again, people want signings. People want that dopamine rush of someone new coming through the door. And, they want these kind of sexy names that are going to come in. Everyone is desperate for signings, aren't they? Like, that's what everyone wants. People thrive off of it. But when you balance this window out as a whole, we might have maybe left ourselves short in one or two areas, maybe, that we kind of talked about. Maybe there is that need for that other centre-back there. Maybe another midfielder as well was someone that they wanted. But I think on the whole, it's been a very good window in terms of bringing the right kind of profile of players in, but also letting these players go who, when you go, like, it's not even just about the money in terms of like the wages and stuff, but you could go through those players like Skippy, got a great fee for, Emerson Royale, Eric Dyer, who's obviously gone in January, but sort of gone in this summer. Hojbjerg, Brian Hill, Solomon. These are players that don't really fit the system in terms of the way that we play. So again, in terms of in that year two of Ange ball, Ange kind of spoke about it. I remember Kulusevski doing an interview during the summer of like, the first year was kind of about, right, go and play with freedom. Let's go and play. This year is very much a case of that as well, building on that in terms of the principle and the style, but really kind of nailing down certain areas of the game that we need to improve on off the back of last year. And it's also easy to do that with maybe a slightly smaller squad, a younger squad. We've brought the average age down. We've brought the wage bill down massively. You've got a lot of hungry players that want to be there and want to fight for their place. And I think we're in a good, we might be in our squad might be smaller, but I think we're in a much better place in terms of that overall squad than we were last year. So yeah, I think all things considered, I think it's been a pretty good window for Spurs.
Yeah, so what I'll do then is to round up, I want your rating of the window out of 10 and who your favourite signing is.
I think my favourite signing is I think it's got to be Solanke, because I think we like to go out and kind of show the intent. And again, we spoke about it earlier about like what is backing the manager. Is it going and spending a load of money, which I think some certain sections of the fan base, that's what they see as backing, spend. or identifying a profile of player that really suits the way that the manager wants to play for the next 5 or 6 years. This kind of long-term project that we're clearly on. But what's good about Solanke is that it meets those two things in the middle. You've got someone who's proven, and I think there was an Athletic piece about this. I think Jack Pitt-Brook was talking about the fact that Tottenham's philosophy in terms of their transfers, in terms of bringing in all this young talent, is all well and good, and I think we're all definitely behind that. But the striker position is not an area of the pitch where you can do that. It is an area that you do need to go out and buy someone who's more proven, who has kind of got this track record behind them. So I love the signing of Solanke because it kind of meets all of those areas in the middle in terms of what Spurs are trying to be. Because I think he's 26, but he's still young enough where he's got a lot to prove. He's old enough to be considered maybe proven with the track record that he's got behind him. He's, I think in terms of his own career trajectory as well, he's come to a big club at the right time to kind of say to everyone, look, I can do it. It didn't quite work out for me at Chelsea and Liverpool. I've done really well at Bournemouth. I'm going to show you how good I am. I think it's a really good move, all things considered, in terms of, look, people can talk about the fee, but he's an English striker who scored 20-odd goals last season. It is what it is, and I think his trajectory is only going one way. If I was to rate the window out of 10, again, there is a chance that we could bring in someone today. It's not going to be someone of necessarily a higher profile. We know that with kind of this late in the window, someone who can just cover an area in the squad, maybe another young player. Let's see whether it's a defender or not. I think if we're able to get one more over the line tomorrow, even kind of with the business we've already done, I'd consider it at least a 7.5, pushing on an 8 if we were to get that other player across the line. I think what this window has done, and again, people are so focused on right now and like how is this squad shaping up right now? What this squad has done, and kind of linking it back to the outgoings, is set us up really well for the next few transfer windows as well, because we've got we've got a stable squad now. There aren't many players, if you were to go through that squad of players that's still there, that you'd sell. Like, we're only going to be looking to add quality, or maybe let players go next season who haven't quite clicked in this year too. But I can't see who that's going to be, really. I think we've got a really good settled squad now that we can just add those little, people were so desperate for kind of like an Eze signing or someone. I was definitely in that camp.
Yeah,
maybe that's one for like next summer, where it's like, okay, we've got a really settled squad now. There aren't many players that we want to get rid of. It's just about adding that little sprinkling of quality on top for that added extra competition. And I think it's set us up really well for January and next summer. So I think in the long run, this will be looked back as kind of what you said about Arsenal, quite an important transfer window for Spurs in terms of getting rid of the deadwood and also bringing in a lot of young players that you can mould into your way of thinking, as well as going and buying an established striker, which we've been desperate for, even maybe before Harry Kane left, to be honest, for someone who would have been able to compete with him at the time, but also someone now who can definitely take over that mantle of being Spurs' number 9. And again, he's not going to live up to that. We don't expect him to, but I think if he gets close, it's scoring 15, 20 goals a season for the next few years, you're definitely going to take that in terms of return on investment. So I'm really excited about Solanke and excited about what Spurs have done in this window.
Yeah, to round up, I mean, not to copy her, but yeah, I think Solanke was the final piece to maybe this Spurs jigsaw puzzle. Even, I saw people, last year being like, Kane was leaving, but people weren't too upset because they thought, maybe we've got the capability to still, do stuff. And we show with Richarlison that this team could score goals. I think, Solanke, I don't think there's pressure on him to score 20 to 30, but what we've shown is, for example, Christian Romero was the highest scoring defender in the Premier League last year. And we've seen so many different goal scorers already, some with 2. Pedro Porro's netted, Romero, the goals are spread around quite nicely at Tottenham. So I feel like there's not as much pressure on Solanke to really, hit the silly numbers we saw from Kane, because he will get compared to Kane, because that's just what the media will do. And to give the window a rating, I'd probably give it a 7 as well. I feel like I wasn't one of these fans where I thought we needed to go out and sign so many starters. And a lot of people have been like, we needed this. We haven't signed it. Only Solanke is a guaranteed start. And I thought, surely what we need is depth. And the fact that we've got rid of a lot of our deadwood, we needed to replace it. And, I feel like looking at our bench now, I'm more, excited about the players to potentially come on. There's going to be competition on the wings. Richarlison to come on in the final moments, or, he starts and Solanke comes on. A very versatile midfield, a strong defence with Dragerson there as well. And, everyone's like a backup goalkeeper. And I'm like, but Vicario didn't get injured last season, touch wood. And, that's not a must. That's something to be...
Yeah.
It's not at all, and especially when you've still got, I feel like Alfie Whiteman and Brandon Austin are all right enough backups. You got Fraser Forster still there as well, who could just do a job. He's not really good with his feet, but still,
Or saving
good thing.
penalties.
Exactly.
Hopefully that Coventry game doesn't go to a penalty shootout.
I know, don't honestly, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with what we've done. I think we've brought in some promising talent. A proven striker has to be a 7. I think maybe if we signed a versatile defender, but they would be playing backup. So it's a hard sell. It's like when we would go to teams and be like, "Do you want to sell us your striker?" And they go, "Do I have to be back up to Harry Kane?" Yes. Well, I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sorry, you got to be back up to Destiny Udogie or Mickey Van der Ven. It's like not going to happen, is it? But we could, as soon as he hits the deck, you'll be in the starting lineup, which we don't want, obviously, either. But yeah, I think 7 is fair. I think it's hard for a team to have a 10 out of 10 window nowadays, unless you could sign one player and that could be your 10 out of 10 window. You sign Haaland for City, that's your 10 out of 10 window. But
exactly,
I don't know. It's hard to assess these things, really. But
yeah, also, like, you look at, just to quickly on that, like, you look at Aston Villa, for example. I think everyone got really carried away with their business at the start of the window because they obviously spent a lot of money, bought a lot of players in, but they've actually ended up selling Cameron Archer and loaned out the 2 players that they got in return for selling Douglas Luiz to Juventus. So people see it as like because they went out and got 9 players in the first, 3 or 4 weeks maybe of the window. I think people got a bit carried away with that. But I think like you said, I think Solanke on his own could make it a 10 out of 10 window if he scores 30 goals this year. So it's really hard to judge it now, but I think that's probably around a 7.5. I think is pretty fair.
Yeah, well, that's our assessment of the I was going to say January summer transfer window. I mean, January. Who knows what we're going to do in January? But obviously, that's a good few months away. We've got some actual Premier League football now to sink our teeth into without talking about transfers. But thank you very much, Ben, for joining me. Really enjoyed that chat. Glad to finally get you on the channel in like a big full piece. So, but before we go, anything you want to plug? You obviously, you're on the overlap now. You're here, there, everywhere. It's Satchel Labs channel. Anything you want to plug in particular?
Yeah, man, I've really enjoyed that. Thank you. We've been looking forward to doing something together. Go and subscribe on YouTube. Just about to tick over to the 5K mark. So, thanks to everyone who's kind of already subscribed. Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of crossover between our 2 channels anyway. The overlap. I think there's another episode coming out maybe this week where we got to chat transfers. I got to give my opinion on Spurs' best and worst ever signings. So give that a watch for what you think that was going to be. You could probably guess. Drop us a follow on TikTok and Daring and Doing podcast as well. So massively appreciate it, mate. Should definitely get you on my channel as well, 100%.
That'd be class. Yeah, I'll put all your links in the description down below. And if you have enjoyed this, you want to see more of me and Ben maybe doing a few more videos as the season goes on, let us know what you made of it. Hit the like button, subscribe, notification bell, and you can become a member. Link in the description down below. But until then, obviously, we roll on to Newcastle, hopefully getting 3 points in a venue that's not been so nice to us. But yeah, see you with a reaction to that game afterwards. But yeah, as I said, if there's any breaking news on deadline day, I'm sure to react to it, and maybe the Europa League draw as well. But until then, see you guys pretty soon. Bye.
Last one. Up the Spurs.